I was going to school in St. Louis. He had been in the Army, and he had got a job in Wisconsin. My parents lived in Georgia. His parents lived in Marion, Indiana. And I was from Newark, Ohio, and I hadn't been there since the day after I graduated from high school. But my relatives were there, and I figured that's the most logical place because...
Dry Docks, Father Dry Docks, was near there in Ohio. And so it worked out very nicely.
I rented a beautiful gown in Georgia. It was some kind of a great expensive type gown for $50, and my parents could take it back. It was the second wedding I was ever at in my life, so I didn't know much about weddings. It was the most boring wedding I've ever been to, in the fact all they had was a cake. In those days they'd have a little bowl of peanuts and a bowl of little mints, and I can't remember, I don't think they had a meal. I had bridesmaids, friends, and my sister. The other one was in the convent, and his brother Ed was the best man, and some other friends were.
The wedding was boring, no question about that.
And it didn't have beautiful music either.
And after the wedding, then it got real exciting.
Well, I'll tell you something I've probably never told anybody before. So, the movies I had ever seen, that when they showed the scene of the woman, the wedding night, she always came out with breathless negligee out of the bathroom and all that, and I thought, I didn't know what I was getting into in life, but that wasn't going to be any of my scenes. So I had my sister Marty make me orange Hawaiian muumuu, big loose muumuu, and that's what I had for my sleeping garment.
I do remember that. I mean, how could you forget?
We moved into our trailer in Wisconsin, and nobody knew us other than some of his friends from work, so life was a honeymoon.
Yeah, still going on. Hi, honey.
Hi, Mooney. The idea of a trailer was something new and not too, I had no...
It was plenty comfortable for us until we started having kids.
It was 8 foot wide by 41 feet long.
And how many bedrooms?
Well, there was the hall, there was a back bedroom, there was a living room, a little tiny kitchen, bathroom the size of a shower stall practically, a little bit bigger. In the hall between the kitchen and the back bedroom was a bunk bed, and which we slept on in the bunk bed when Tony got the big bedroom in his baby bed.
Can you imagine that? The baby got the big master bedroom. And we slept in a little bitty...
The bottom of a bunk
bottom
bed.
Of a
It was very
bunk.
cozy. We got married in June. He was born in August the following year. I had a little pain in my stomach around Christmas time, and I thought it was appendicitis, and the doctor said come back in a couple of weeks. He wasn't surprised, but I had no idea how this could have come about. So I thought I'd surprise him.
It was a miracle, yes.
I thought I'd surprise him. He said, well, I wasn't really surprised. After all, he came from a big family with babies all over the place. Well, I remember before he was born, we went to a friend's house, and they had a newborn baby. And after we left their apartment, I burst into tears, and he said, what's the matter with you? And I said, I'll never be able to handle anything that small. I don't think I'm up to this, and because their baby was like 5 pounds. But then when Tony was born, I could say, Tony, get up and get yourself some breakfast. He was a good, healthy baby. He was 9 pounds. It was a big surprise, all natural childbirth. He was a beautiful baby because his head was perfectly formed. He was the most beautiful baby I ever saw. Most babies are smaller and they're shrunken looking. They all look the same, but he was full grown. You don't know how to be a parent, and you're still trying to figure out who you are. You try out every kind of thing on the first child, and you learn a lot, and the poor kid is the result, however he comes out. But our Tony came out beautifully. I'm so proud of Tony. He's the best person, so kind and good to people. He's loved everywhere, but he was the first child, and we tried out a lot of things on how to be a parent.
Tom, had you ever changed a diaper, or did you change a diaper?
Are you kidding? Would I touch those things?
If it was only the number one, he did. He refused to take care of the other.
Yeah, I changed some.
He had just started in the stockbroker business, and then we could have goals, to get out of the trailer and so forth. But some other stockbroker warned him that you're going to be getting a notice from the government to report, because he had been in the reserve but never went to a meeting or anything, and had to serve, so we went to Washington.
As far as the brokerage firm that I worked for, they were very kind. Well, they had to be kind, because when the Army calls you, that's first priority. But they were just anxious for me to get back, and were very, very nice about it.
I was a magazine editor, so he left. There was a comic relief moment when we went down the road to Columbus, Wisconsin, to get him on the train, and it was a hard goodbye. Somebody babysat for Tony, and it was a very difficult moment. And then he lifted his suitcase and the handle broke. So that broke the tension a little bit. And then he came home for Christmas and said, we're going to find a house when we get out there, we won't worry about it. So we left with Tony and this huge rocking horse in the back of our station wagon, had some adventures along the way. Car breakdown and so forth, and
they would talk about, we have this place, it's a trailer in such and such a place. Anybody interested? And boy, I ran right up front, because everybody was looking for a place to live. And so they grabbed me and gave me the place, and it was the best selection that anybody could have made. It was a trailer, but a big one, much bigger than the one we had lived in before.
like a castle.
And it was within an easy little walk to a lake, a beautiful lake. And the neighborhood was beautiful homes all around it.
People with airplanes that flew in, and boats and gardeners. The Army owned this little niche in the...
And it was cheap.
We didn't have any money, but it was, what can you say, it's so gorgeous out there. We were just there.
Close to Seattle, and we got up to the World's Fair up there.
Yeah, it was on
when
that
they
time.
Built the tower.
Space Needle.
Yeah.
We didn't
Space
go
Needle.
up it because we didn't have the dollar.
No, in fact, we only had enough money to
buy one Swedish waffle that we split.
Yeah.
But we went there. You didn't need money to enjoy the beauty of
yeah.
Mount Rainier. I went crazy over
That was neat.
lake and everything. And Claire came a little bit early. And he was out on guard duty. She was real small. She was 6 pounds, so that was nice. And Tony was named after the Franciscan Anthony Francis, and right there in Assisi is Claire, St. Clair, of the poor St. Clairs, so her name is Claire Maria. We still had the trailer. Mary Agnes had moved, and that was one of the reasons we moved to Wisconsin. They lived in New Glarus. They had moved back because his job took him to Bryan, Ohio. We couldn't live back in that little 8x41 after having lived in the castle 10x51. So we went to a 4-unit apartment in Madison. He went back to work. Then I was home with the kids.
And
And
then Sun Prairie. It was just a nice place to live, a wonderful place to live. I look out the window, I could see all the college students screaming and yelling, carrying signs and all
breaking
that.
windows.
And didn't want to go to war in Vietnam, and they didn't want to fight, period.
Philip was born in Madison. Everything went well, and we had a name. We had a girl's name picked out, Celine Maria, but it wasn't the girl, so we said, oh, I was half asleep in the hospital, and I heard somebody said, Philip, Philip, and it didn't really sound like that. It sounded like that to me, and it was one of the names that I had thought of, and oh, Philip, that sounds good. So my brother and his brother are Richard, so it was Philip Richard. And he was a beautiful baby. His only bad thing that I could say about Philip was he got up real early every morning. He's a morning guy, he still is. And that didn't sit well with me, especially after nursing in the early days and so forth, but he was always right up there. He was a week old. Tom called me one day and said, do you have the TV on? I said, I never watch TV, you know that, in the daytime. What? Turn it on. Oh, well, okay, so I turned it on. What's on? Some soap opera. Well, just leave it on. Okay, what's happening?
And I gave it a great deal of thought, Grandpa.
Here is a bulletin from CBS News. In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas.
Then the news came on and said President Kennedy had been shot. I don't think they announced the death right away.
We traded stocks, securities with a lot of different companies in the U.S. And one of my trading partners was up in Dallas, and he got the news immediately, and he sent it to me on the ticker tape. And I called her, and that's before it was announced. That was probably a half hour before it was announced on public television. So.
This picture has just been transmitted by wire. It is a picture taken just a moment or two before the incident. If you can zoom in with that camera, we can get a closer look at this picture. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
They had to get prepared. They knew he was dead. They had to get Secret Service, I suppose, whatever.
I played hell with the stock market, I'll tell you that. The market dropped.
Oh, it did. Huh?
Well, yeah.
Well, that's why
news
they
like
were on
that
top
always
of it.
creates turmoil in the market.
And people to this day that are still alive remember where they were when Kennedy was shot.
Mm-hmm.
It was a
pretty
traumatic
popular.
moment in America.
He fell
Philip
into-
was a baby, and I was nursing
beautiful.
Philip, and Tony and Claire were little guys, and they were running around. So I said, sit in this rocking chair. It was in fall. It must have been in November or something like that. And they were sitting in the rocking chair, and unfortunately, right next to the rocking chair that I hadn't paid attention to, we had a table that we use as a lamp table. We just covered that over and put something on it, an old skirt or something, put a lamp on it. But he took that pot out of there to make a paper mache mountain like they used to in Marion, to make a big paper mache creche in our apartment. And I left that thing carelessly upside down. So here's this metal ring of the top of that and the legs underneath. And so they rocked, and Tony fell on it, cut his face, and I saw that, and he has a high pain tolerance, so he didn't scream bloody murder, but I picked him up and I saw this raw cut, the blood, and it terrified me. I'd never seen anything like that before.
End of story.
Oh.
Celine, I'm
Celine,
sorry.
yeah,
Yes,
she was
yes,
born
yes,
in
yes.
65, January 65. So we moved in Labor Day or Memorial Day of 64 into our house in Sun Prairie, our split level that we.
We had that house built, and our kids loved it because they had a lot of neighborhood kids to run around with. Yeah.
Yard upon yard, no
Uh-huh.
fences.
There
I
you go.
discovered after, when we were in the military, that I was Rh negative. And I said, no, you're wrong, because I already had a child and I'm not Rh negative. And they said, yes, you're in the military and you are. Okay, test my blood again, and I was. So that meant I had the possibility. He was B positive, I was B negative, of having what they called a blue baby or something. So toward the end, I always had to go in every 2 weeks to get a blood test. And with Celine and John, he called me with Celine. All right, what are you doing today? It was a Sunday. Oh, not much. How would you like to have a baby? We were building our house, so when Philip was young, so Celine was born after we moved into our house. Well, we had 5 kids in 6 years. Does that tell you
Does
something?
that sound strategy? Yeah, it sounds like strategy. No, in fact, the feeling in the Catholic Church at that time was
Still is.
no abortions, no what do you call it?
Birth control.
Yeah.
Well, but they had natural family planning, which they have now. I listen to the Catholic radio station all the time, and apparently it's really works now. But we had a Catholic doctor, Irish Catholic doctor with 11 children, and he said that, and this was in the 60s after the pill, so he said that he would prescribe the pill for me so that I could get into a natural rhythm, so that the objective was not to prevent birth, but to get into a natural rhythm. So I did that, worked with that, and then John came along in 66, October.
Tony was big and tried to get in trouble as much as he could.
He teased Celine a lot,
Yeah, he was always teasing Celine, that's right.
and she
And
probably...
then Claire was just a very sweet young thing, but she tried to get in trouble too now and then. And then there was Philip next, and Philip, oh, he was tender and loving, and he tried to get in trouble all the time. And then who came after Philip? It was Celine. He was always getting them into trouble. And last of all, there was John. And John was the victim of all of them, you see.
He's making all this up.
Yeah. So, he just, every once in a while when they'd all get in a fight, I'd go out in the backyard and lay down with my face in the mud,
No, he built ice skating rink in the back. We went swimming a lot. We went out ice skating. We were out in the winter shoveling snow. Played a lot of games in the house. The kids played games with each other. We had a family room downstairs. Sunday night was their big time Walt Disney movie, and that was Sunday night. Was a huge bag of popcorn and Kool-Aid. That was dinner. That was a fun thing.
And
we
we
did a
loved
lot
them
of
all.
yes, we did a lot of family things.
Hey, they were great kids.
The boys were altar
Ornery as
boys.
hell, but just great kids.
And we had a lot of kids in the neighborhood over all the time, their own age.
Yeah.
But we took some big trips across the West.
Yeah.
Kids
We
remember
took them
John.
everywhere.
Our big trip for many years was going to Marion. Everybody in the family loved the Birs and loved going to Marion. It was a 6-hour or 7-hour trip. And we always stayed, usually we stayed at Rita's or on D Street. He and I would stay there, and the kids were shipped out, making trouble at your house, I understand. But and they loved going to your house because you had a big house. It was a joy because they had so many cousins. Each one had one that was special to them. For Claire, it was Paul and Julie. For Tony, it was you guys.
A lot of it was around prayer and the church and so on.
He was the choir director.
Yeah, and that's right. We did a lot of singing
On the
stuff
piano,
together.
a lot of music.
But we didn't push them into any particular direction of what they were going to be.
They each had their own personality.
Yeah. Claire was always gentle.
Philip always had a bucket full of friends.
Celine
And
was
Claire
always
too.
crazy.
And Celine was 4 years younger than Claire, and Claire was her role model. She wanted to be like Claire. Celine was a late bloomer, and the boys had a paper route. The boys had a paper route.
They were all wonderful
babysat.
kids. I don't know if they took after
They
me or
sang.
her.
Yeah, music was important, religion was important, and
We're a little bit surprised that they didn't take off into all different directions.
we're happy to have them
but
around.
very, very happy that they didn't.
We get together a lot. We do a lot of
yeah,
family
yeah.
stuff together, vacation.
That's right.
Come here, games, go to the zoo when the kids, with the grandkids. We've done a gazillion things. Every one of them, you learn that when you're young, you think you're going to be this, I'm going to be a fireman, or I'm going to college and be an engineer or something, but things change. Your life and goes in different directions. Look at him. He was going to be a priest, and you never know. You're lucky. We were lucky and blessed to always have good health. Our kids always had good health. We were so blessed with that, for one thing.
What do we do otherwise? I wouldn't do anything otherwise. You're a good little girl.
Well, yeah, marriage is about
good
giving,
people.
isn't it? And it's about sharing, isn't it? And I think it's easier when you share a culture, and I think it's easy for us who share religion is a big part of our culture, and that's so important.
The only thing we don't share is my wallet.
And I think the fact that I got married right out of college, started having kids, I never had that time in life where I could have money to spend and start thinking about clothes and all those kinds of things. It just never was part of what I was interested in anyway. And so it's not something to feel bad about. To me, it's a challenge to overcome. If you only have $5, that's what you live on. And that's okay.
Look at the house we ended up with. It's beautiful.
And
Best house
as
in the
far as
neighborhood.
being a parent, I think consistency and being honest and never breaking a promise and is important. And also they see how we are together. We've been blessed.